So this is the Cecily Housing Program.
Program manager Aishima Harris is giving us a tour inside a safe house for women in Vancouver.
Hey, Jana, I didn't know you were here.
It's a home exclusively for older women.
We have women here who are 75, 76.
Some have come to escape physical violence, some sexual abuse.
So we are staffed 24/7. This is our front desk.
It gives them a safe place to stay and help navigating the legal system.
We're the ones they come and brainstorm to see, okay, what step do I take next? Where do I go? How do I access this? Tomorrow when you come in, there's a couple issues that we need to deal with.
Kim Corbett has worked with several elderly women. She says the justice system often seems ill-prepared for them.
I have seen women with dementia, women with lower cognitive functioning or developmental disabilities. I can say that they are much more preyed upon than higher functioning women, and it happens to them a lot more, and nobody believes them.
Women's stories of sexual assault are being talked about now like never before. But there are reasons to wonder if Me Too's focus on younger women has done anything for those who are arguably more vulnerable.
Making faces for the camera. Always. It's a selfie.
From her home just north of Toronto, Eva Sherdan is describing her mother, Sonia.
She was amazing. She was 1 meter, 54 centimeters, and the biggest hero I could have ever known or seen. Reading all the time. She was the only one in the nursing home who came with so many books and dictionaries.
In 2015, Sonia was moved to a nearby hospital to treat pneumonia. She wasn't there long before returning to her nursing home, but her family says she was changed.
What change did you notice in her?
She wasn't herself at all. At all. Even her facial expressions, everything wasn't there. She didn't communicate.
Roughly 2 months after her mother had been discharged, hospital administrators asked Eva to come to a meeting.
It never occurred to you what they were about to tell you?
Never in my life.
Hospital staff revealed they believed her mother had been sexually assaulted by a healthcare worker during her stay.
I'm still shocked every time that I think about it. I don't want to analyze all the details.
Did she ever talk to you about what happened?
Never, but every time a man came to the room, even a month later, a year later, she put her hands over her breast, shaking like this.
The personal care worker insisted his attempts to do intimate cleaning had simply been misunderstood. But several more incidents involving elderly patients were reported by hospital workers. He was fired and eventually charged with sexually assaulting 5 women, all of them in their 80s and 90s.
We were definitely working with the fact that we had a strong case. That's what we believed.
Detective Lori Perks was in charge of the investigation.
How difficult is it to put together a case involving an elderly victim?
Is there any signs of dementia? Is that going to be affected in your investigation long term? Will their memory change? We can get around that with the elderly with a sworn video statement form, and that is used in the event that something does happen to your victim.
Did you have those in this case?
We did.
Some of the alleged victims identified by the hospital talked to police. Sonia wasn't one of them. She had virtually stopped talking by then. Those that did made clear how they felt.
You know, they were believable. They were shattered by what had happened to them, and that could be seen in interviewing them or speaking to them or watching their statement. You could see that.
But the trial ended before it could begin, and age appears to be part of the reason. Sonia Sherdan died 2 months earlier. She was 91. The Crown, citing the complainant's frailties and other difficulties with the case, withdrew the charges of sexual assault. The judge accepted a single guilty plea for a slap the worker admitted he gave another elderly woman. He received a conditional discharge and no criminal record.
I feel that I'm still in shock.
Were you ever told why they didn't go ahead?
We asked him, how did you close it? And he said, it's a part of the system. The victims were frail. And he said, you have to understand it. This is the system.
You know, you do think about your parents or your grandparents and how that would have affected them, or how would you feel, you know, trying to be an advocate for your parent or your grandparent in that situation. Obviously, I would have liked to see a different outcome. I don't have control over that.
The problem for older women is that they're not seen as targets of sexual assault at all.
UBC law professor Janine Benedette co-authored a study looking at 2 decades of cases of sexual assault involving older women. It found those cases that made it to trial were often the very extreme. Cases less clear-cut rarely made it that far.
What was so striking about the cases we saw that were actually going to court was how much they looked like sexual assault cases involving younger women that would have been prosecuted in the 1960s and 1970s, before we had a complete re-examination of how pervasive sexual assault was and who was actually committing it. And it was as if the sexual assaults against older women were somehow frozen in time.
Benedette believes while society is inclined to take women's stories more seriously now than it once did, that's still not true for elderly women.
We need to recognize that if we aren't willing to proceed with cases involving highly vulnerable victims, just because they may have difficulty testifying, just because our criminal trial process wasn't really designed with them in mind, that those victims become the perfect targets.
We're just going to get you mic'd up and then we'll use
Ronna Ambrose believes she may have part of the remedy.
We don't have a problem with our law. We have a problem with the way that it is being implemented in our court system.
The leader of the opposition.
She was once the federal conservative leader. Before she left politics, Ambrose tried to make a change to the way lawyers and judges are trained.
As you know, I introduced a private member's bill to mandate sexual assault training for judges. We have judges that are former corporate lawyers, former energy sector lawyers that are now presiding over sexual assault cases. And these are extremely complex cases.
When we hear about Me Too, there hasn't been much conversation around older women.
There's this idea that if a woman is older, well, you know, why would somebody rape them? But that gets back to this idea that rape is about sex. It's not, it's about power and violence. The training is about that. It's about understanding all of these dynamics around sexual assault, the stereotypes, the bias that comes with it, and really having a comprehensive view of the impact on the victim.
The bill flew through the House of Commons, but has been stalled in the Senate for nearly 2 years by some who've told her it's an overreaction to Me Too.
We just have to keep pushing and trying to make the case that those that are trying to block it, that this is important.
Why does this matter to you so much?
You know what? There's so many people that I've worked with on this bill. And you know, I could list the stakeholders, the Native Women's Association of Canada, the London Abuse Center. I mean, women's groups, it makes me emotional actually. And so many survivors. It's been to hear their stories. And these guys, I mean, they've been dismissive, disrespectful, ignorant to me. Well, how are these women going to get anywhere with them?
Does it feel like Me Too left women like your mom, their age, behind?
Completely, completely. And it's not about old women only, it's about all the helpless.
Neither the judge nor the Crown in the case would talk about the decision to withdraw the charges. The conditional discharge the personal care worker received expires next year, and he'll be able to work with elderly patients again. But the very serious allegations about what may have happened to Sonia and others have simply faded away with them. Diana Swain, CBC News, Toronto.